I love the creativity. I love working in the kitchen. I love bringing food to the table. I hate sending invoices. I hate the accounting part of it. And the first year, my husband was like, he's a wealth manager, he's a financial advisor. He saw my books and he was like, this is atrocious.
Welcome to Made Locally, the podcast for people building real businesses in the real world. I'm Rahul Jaswa, and on this show, I interview the entrepreneurs that have built thriving local businesses to uncover how they attracted customers, built strong brands, and grew rapidly and sustainably. You'll hear from operators, founders, and experts sharing what's actually working across marketing, operations, and technology. No fluff, just practical insights you can use today. Today's guest is Robin. She's the founder and curator of Savory Girl Idaho, a business that is transforming the charcuterie board wave and grazing table trend into immersive experiences centered around connection, creativity, and community. I had a chance to look at a lot of your online marketing, your social media, your website, some of those things, and it seemed like you'd done a lot of things very intentionally to create like an incredible community around what you're building. And it also seems like a really hyper local brand that you've created. And so I think there's going to be a lot of really interesting stories and best practices and things that you've learned along the way to share. So I'm really excited to do this. Maybe just to get things going, you could just tell us a little bit about your background and what kind of led you to where you are now.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. What led me to here? I think a lot of paths led me to here. I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. I've had other businesses, and I was kind of at a point where my kids are pretty much grown up, and it was time for me to get back into something that would fill my cup. And I really had no intentions to go into catering. Honestly, it was never on my radar. My background is actually in marketing. And so it just wasn't on my radar. I travel a lot and I've lived all over the world and I love food. I love fellowship and I love bringing people together. And so I have this really cool group of girlfriends that we love to do everything themed. If it's a theme party, we're all here for it. And I didn't do the food. And I would post in my stories like what we were doing. And people would be like, can you do that for me? And so this is how my business turned into a business. I started helping people just on the side a little bit here and there. And the funny thing is I actually got a job at a catering company and I hated it. It is totally not for me. But what I realized is I actually love fellowship and food and bringing people together. I just don't like working for other people.
Yeah.
And so
Join the club.
right? And so the more and more like Cindy's cousin's aunt was having me do their wedding, their bridal shower, anything like that, I realized that there was something out there and that I should roll with it. My husband was like, what you're doing is illegal. You cannot prepare food at home and take it to somebody's wedding. And really go big or go home. Do something with it. And so my husband kind of gave me the push. Um, and I'm grateful for that. I started out really small because you can't work out of your house. And I was lucky to know somebody who had a commercial kitchen in her garage. And I outgrew that really quickly. I got picked up by Channel 6 News for my charcuterie. They thought it was really creative. And I got picked up for a local segment. And then I just kind of blew up from there. I had people from Twin Falls coming to get charcuterie from me. Like they saw that special on Channel 6, like, we love your work. And so that was kind of the pivotal point for me where I was like, I really need to turn this into a business. And so I worked in my friend's commercial kitchen for just under a year and realized I needed a brick and mortar. And so I put a lot of legwork into actually finding something in our budget that's centrally located. And now we've been in our own brick and mortar for 2 years.
Wow. Amazing. So it sounded like you've kind of always been a pretty adventurous person. You said you'd sort of lived around the world, you'd started other businesses, and you always had this entrepreneurial spark inside of you. What are some of the places that you've lived that were really formative to the way you think about the world? What are some of the previous businesses that you started along the way?
So, Italy is kind of moved to Italy at 23. I married my husband almost 30 years ago, and I was this little, this girl from Idaho. And my parents traveled me well. It's not like I hadn't ever been anywhere, but just to move from Idaho to Italy, I was a BSU graduate. Got married right after my senior year. We moved to Italy and we lived there for 4 years. And that's where I found a huge passion for food and flavors and colors and fellowship, and understood the value of fellowship that came with food. Because Italians are all about food and feasting and family. And feast will just last all night and everybody will just be at the table, and it's just such a beautiful, it's just beautiful having people come together and over food and love, and food brings people together in a way that nothing else can. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
When a meal is good, you can forget all the chaos in the world around you, right? So beautiful, delicious food and people, that'll change the vibe in a minute. And everybody's talking about the food and the flavor profile and the colors and all of that. And that's kind of what I wanted to bring to the table, that feeling that, that I had in Italy, that like gave me such a genuine love for fellowship and people and family. I wanted to bring that to basically to Boise, to Idaho, to the Treasure Valley, because I noticed, I started my company really kind of on the heels of COVID, when people just were so disconnected and felt so pulled apart. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to bring people together with food. And that was kind of the fundamental foundation of my business. The other businesses I've had was, I had a gift shop. I grew up with a mother who had art galleries and gift shops, and I worked in her stores. And then I also had an e-commerce business selling activewear that I was very successful with during COVID. And also the other job I had, which intrigues people a whole lot, is when my kids were little and all through them growing up, I stumbled upon professional sweepstaking. I was a very lucrative, what they would consider a high roller sweepstaker. That's kind of a business in itself. I ended up entering some local contest or not local, it was a national contest on Twitter, had no idea what I was doing. And I won a tent and 100 boxes of wheat thins from Wheat Thins. What's somebody going to do with 100 boxes of wheat thins? I donated them to the food shelter because there's no way our family of 5 could eat those before they expired. I kept a handful for me. And somebody actually slid into my DMs and they noticed that I was able to get like 1,000 retweets, which I guess that's not easy. I've just always had a lot of grit. And I'm like, well, this should be easy. I want to win it. Why not? Like, why not go for it? And they asked me if I was a sweeper, which I had no idea what a sweeper was at the time, and it's sweepstaker. So I kind of dabbled in it. I was very intrigued because I was a couponer before that. And it takes the same grit and the same mentality that a couponer has, because it's literally the same mentality that is used to enter sweepstakes. A lot of is just being there at the right time, but it's also putting yourself out there. Where I excelled most was what people would call the skills contest. I would put myself out there on social media and really truly not care about what people thought, and that won me a trip to the World Cup in Russia. It won me a trip to the Daytona 100. It won me a motorcycle. You name it, I've won it. My son one year, he wanted a gaming system, an Xbox One for Christmas. I won 4 of them. Like, what I realized, because I do have a marketing background, was I realized that's their marketing budget. And then I learned to read statistically the odds, and, like, I would go to the rules, and I would know where to enter and where not to, because I'd be like, "Oh, I'm their target market," or "I'm not their target market." Like, for example, I knew Cheerios did a giveaway where you stacked Cheerios, and it was really geared towards men. And I knew there's no way I was going to win. So I actually entered my husband. I had my husband enter from his account. I've always had a creative brain. And I just said to my husband, you know what? Everybody else is stacking the Cheerios on their kids' heads. I had my son stack the Cheerios on my husband's head when he was sleeping.
Nice. Very
So
creative.
so I just kind of flipped the switch and he won that trip. It was a trip for 4. And so I let him take my kids and they got to go to the Mall of America in Minnesota. He got his name and I think his picture, I can't remember, on a Cheerios box. And the kids got to do all the attractions at the Mall of America and they got to go to General Mills. And it was like a really cool thing, right? And those are the experiences that you would never do on your own. And that was the attraction of sweepstakes for me. Cause like I remember one of the first trips I won, they kind of roll out the red carpet for you. You get swag, you get front row seats, you get to see the new and upcoming bands and like it is their marketing budget. And so then I just kind of learned early on. I won a contest from Dr. Pepper and we got to go to the Cotton Bowl in Austin, Texas. And that's kinda where I realized that this is their marketing money because I'm Gen X, and I noticed that everybody in the room that they gave that trip to was Gen X. And I noticed that they took us to the Dallas Cowboys, VIP room, and, like, all the music was '80s and '90s music. And I was like, that's when my brain went, "This is their marketing money." They're looking for their clients. Why did they pick Gen X? Because they know that Gen X was raised on Dr. Pepper. They want them to introduce it to their children, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. You mentioned that you had a marketing background, and obviously that has played a role in the way that you see all of these different ventures that you go into. What did you do in marketing? What was your marketing experience from the early days?
Well, I actually graduated from BSU with a marketing degree, and my first job was working for the Boise Weekly. And I love that job. That was kind of pound to the pavement, and it was my first job right out of college, and I was in sales more than marketing, but I worked closely with the marketing people because I had to design the ads for my clients, and then they would bring them to life, right? Like, I would meet with the clients, I would get their vision, I would sell them the ads, then I would go back to the artists, and I would be like, "This is what they have in mind, and this is what they need." So that was my first marketing job, and then I moved to Italy for 4 years, and then we came back to Boise, and I got hired by a salad dressing company named Suzanne's Sensational Foods, and they no longer exist. She had me on her marketing team over there. And I was kind of a rookie, I had just come back from Italy, and, she had me traveling all over the place to meet with people and just try to get our product on the shelves. It's definitely a different world from, like, where marketing is now because that was back, gosh, in the late '90s, early 2000s that I did that, and then I would say that, as far as social media and how I do my marketing now, that was all learned from sweepstaking because, like, sweepstaking is really about they want a face for their product, right? So, you have to become their client, and so I just learned how to master all aspects of social media, basically to enter to win contests.
That's amazing. One of the things I noticed when I was just doing some research ahead of time is that you are an extremely prolific content creator. Like if you look on Instagram, you had like over 10,000 posts, which I don't think I'd ever seen from a person before. Um, and which is amazing, and I'm sure is a big ingredient in your success. It was also interesting because a lot of the things that you posted were not really about your business. It was sort of like a hybrid of things in your personal life, things in your business, like other brands perhaps you were collaborating with. And so I guess tell me how you think about your social media and that aspect of your marketing.
I think that social media in this generation is where people are finding you. We live in a very hybrid generation, and I think that it's interesting because I work with anybody from a boomer all the way down to Gen Z. And boomer clients are very different from Gen Z clients. And I think social media has trained people to naturally look for their business on social media. You can give somebody a business card, they're going to lose it. But if you say, hey, follow me on social media, that way when you need catering, you will find me, it makes a huge difference. Social media is where it's at. That's kind of where I built my other businesses really was on social media. I learned the value of that. And I also believe in collaboration over competition. I will always collaborate with people. I think it's really important to support small local businesses. I grew up with a mom that always has small businesses and was, a pillar of her community. And I want to do the same. I want to be, I want to help everybody in small business, not just myself.
Yeah. Yeah, really cool. Okay. And so, you'd kind of gone through these different ventures. You'd been a very successful sweeper, and now you were starting to see some organic pull with your charcuterie boards and your catering. And your husband had explained to you that you shouldn't be doing this out of your kitchen and you should really dive in, feet first. And so what happened next? Like once you decided, hey, this is the thing to do, you found a friend who had a kitchen and how did it all kind of get going after that?
Well, after I found the friend that had a kitchen, I realized we needed a much bigger space. And so I started, hitting the pavement and I just found like a local commercial real estate agent. And he helped me find my space. And that took a long time, like way longer than I ever thought to get a brick and mortar up and running. It's a lot different than the last time I had a brick and mortar. It was a piece of cake, but Boise was really small back then. So it made a huge difference this time around. And then once I got in here, I only had one employee. And all of a sudden I realized we're going somewhere. So then I hired another gal and we were drowning because we were so busy. We were all working 12 to 15 hours a day. And then I hired my next employee and I kind of focused on looking for a baker. And so then from there, I just kind of realized, okay, this is bigger than me. And I need people. And so I figured out what my weaknesses were and I hired people where my weaknesses are. I love the creativity. I love working in the kitchen. I love bringing food to the table. I hate sending invoices. I hate the accounting part of it. And the first year, my husband was like, he's a wealth manager. He's a financial advisor. He saw my books and he was like, this is atrocious. And so that's when I realized if I want to be successful, I also have to delegate. So the first thing I did was I hired a bookkeeper after that. And then I hired an admin so that I didn't have to spend so much time in the back office, that I could be where I'm more useful. And then I now have a staff of 6 people. And then I have a couple of ladies that are always on my payroll. And actually, we have more than 6. I think it was 7 people. And then I have ladies that are always on my payroll, and when we're really busy, I just shoot them a text, and they love to earn extra money, especially around the holidays. So we, shoot them a text and say, "These are the hours we have available, who wants them?" And then people raise their hand, and they come in and help.
Wow, cool. And what does a typical day look like now that you've really scaled up and built this into a full operation?
We have atypical days. Well, today, for example, we have a grazing table tomorrow. And so, I was supposed to be shopping right now, because we always have to buy our food. I always try to buy the food as fresh as possible. I do work with, like, local, wholesale companies. I still have to go to Costco and Trader Joe's and other companies and typical day, we've got our kitchen manager who will come in and she'll get the kitchen set up for the day. She makes my shopping lists for me. And so she came in and made her shopping list. And then I was going to go shopping. And then I realized there was a snafu and I needed to be here. So here I am. And then right now I have four girls, four girls in the kitchen, and they're working on the grazing table for tomorrow. And they start prepping the food, and I don't think people understand, like, how much work goes into creating a grazing table, 'cause, when you pay for that, you're paying for the time that I spend shopping, the overhead, obviously, of the kitchen, and then my staffing. So today, they are doing all the work for, a grazing table tomorrow, and then we're also prepping, like, anything we can for the rest of the week. We typically have, we typically have Mondays off. I usually schedule all my appointments on Mondays because it's rare that people want us to cater on Mondays, and we're kind of
It's
a
like
week.
your admin day.
Yeah, and we have a weekend heavy job. So we have all the girls in there right now, working in the kitchen, getting, things organized and just working on the menu for tomorrow. And we have people who are really have, like, really talented, and that's one thing I've learned is, like, I can see people's talents when they come in, like, I was like, "Oh my gosh, you cut the fruit beautifully." So then she just kinda gravitates towards fruit, and I'm like, "Oh, you cut the cheese beautifully." Like, everybody kind of has a certain skill set, and we work around what people enjoy doing and their skill sets, and, like, we actually have T-shirts, and, like, one of the girls' T-shirts says, "Skewer Queen," and just funny little names on our T-shirts just to kind of, 'cause we understand who everybody is.
Yeah. Yeah, makes a ton of sense. How many of these types of projects do you typically have in a week? Are you trying to keep one at a time so it doesn't get too overwhelming or
3 big jobs a day, and on those 3 big jobs, we can also usually absorb in smaller orders, too. It depends on, like, what we have. Like, if I had a last month, we had grazing tables that were an hour and a half drive on opposite sides of Boise. And so, like, on a day like that, I would just take those 2 jobs and maybe something in the morning before we left. Because I do understand, like, we can't be stretched too thin, otherwise what'll happen is it'll show in our work, and we don't you know what I mean? And people hire us because we have a quality superior product, and we want to bring that to the table every single time. Um, do we make mistakes? Yes, we do. 100%. We've all done it in business. We all had to learn. But it's also how you, when you do make a mistake, how you recover from it too makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. And how much are people typically spending when they make an order with you?
Gosh, anywhere from $50 to $5,000.
Wow,
Depends
there are people
on
spending $5,000 for
our
like
biggest
weddings and things
order.
like that.
Yeah, we have an $8,000 order coming up. When you're doing a wedding, sometimes people will hire us to do all of the food. We're doing all their desserts because I don't think people understand, like, what we do is we are full service catering. Yes, we specialize in grazing tables and charcuterie, but we also do all of our desserts in-house. And we bring hot and cold food to the table. One of my favorite jobs, for example, I have a friend who owns Alianka, which is a Russian restaurant here, and somebody had asked her to cater the wedding, and she was too busy. So she knows me. She knows I lived in Italy, Germany, China. She knows that I understand food culture, and she referred me. And so, when and that was actually a really big job. They wanted us to stay at the event. They wanted us to pass out the food. Um, and the husband, was like they were renewing their vows. The husband was Italian, the wife was Russian. They were renewing their vows,
Perfect for you.
right, and they wanted me to do Russian appetizers, which I have never done. And I was like, "That you know what? I'm game. I love a
I'll
challenge."
figure it out.
And I'll figure it out. And so I asked them to send me, like, a whole list of 20 appetizers they wanted, and then I narrowed down the list to what I felt confident I could do well.
Cool. And what would you say are some of your goals for this year as a business?
I think my goal for this year as a business is my biggest goal has been to diversify a little bit more, just keep diversifying to keep up with market demand. We do have a lot of corporate clients. I would like to kind of fill up our earlier in the week than rather always be so weak and heavy, so that I can give more hours to people who really want full time. My goal is to get into corporate events, be able to do their boxed lunches, do their boxed breakfasts. We've done all of that already on a small scale. We do have people hire us for corporate lunches, for corporate breakfasts, but I don't think it's well known that we do that. I really would like to expand that part of the business and pound the pavement and figure out how to get into these corporate companies. I do a ton of networking. I'm in BNI. And as when time permits, I go to all different kinds of networking events. When somebody invites me, I will always show up.
You show up. Amazing. I mean, one thing I noticed online is that your reviews are insane. It's like there's over 300 reviews, and I think every single review is 5 stars, like all 320 of them. Um, so it seems like you must both take great pride in your work and execute at a really high level, but also I feel like people usually leave reviews when they build a personal connection with the person who's doing the work, and I think perhaps because you're like there in person or your team is there in person, you're talking to them and building rapport, that must play part of it. So you kind of always have to be on. I feel like you always have to kind of be in customer service mode a
Oh,
little bit.
yes, for sure, for sure. Makes a huge difference. And I even tell my staff that we're the face of the business. And when we show up, we have to show up. We don't show up in our jeans and tennis shoes. We have logoed aprons, we have chef shirts. I want to look professional from the beginning to the end.
Now you're pretty far along in this particular business venture. You've got a team of 7, sometimes up to 10 or more people working for you. I mean, that's a real business with real operational sophistication. Do you still kind of feel the anxiety that, entrepreneurs often feel early in the journey? Or do you feel like now you kind of have a little bit more predictability and certainty and it's gotten a little bit easier?
Actually, yes and no. Catering is unlike any other industry I've ever been in. A lot of people don't plan. Like, our calendar may be completely empty, and then by the end of the month, it's our biggest month we've ever had. That's the hardest thing. It's really hard to plan. It's really hard to give my staff like a consistent schedule because our schedule is always based on the amount of product we have going out. I always have anxiety. Of course I do. Because when you own a business, I just went to Italy for 2 weeks and I was and I had to fully let go of the reins and just pray that everything came together. And I told my staff, I was look what you did. We got all 5-star reviews when I was at,
That's
look
amazing.
what you did. This wasn't me. This was you guys. Like you guys did
Wow.
this.
So
Um,
cool.
and so, yeah, I think as business owners, we're always on.
Okay, last couple questions for you. So, it seemed like um, in the beginning you were able to really get going very quickly. A lot of business owners really struggle with that very first part of the journey where they're like, "Hey, I have a talent, I have or a service or something that I want to bring to my community." They've probably done it before in some other setting. But they just don't know how to get those like first 50 customers, those first 15 customers. And they sort of feel like it's like this, if you build it, will they come kind of issue. How did you solve that initial kind of 0 to 1? Like, how did you kind of get the ball rolling?
I think it's understanding your market and putting yourself out there in every aspect, not just in one. You cannot put your cards in one place. I built my business on social media, absolutely, 100%. But I also hit the pavement. I was out at every single networking meeting possible. I was handing cards out. I was constantly on social media. I was meeting the neighbors. I was sometimes I would just be like, hey, here's one of my cute little charcuterie boxes. Let me know what you think. It's just about putting yourself out there and being intentional, but also letting it organically come to you as well. I also think when you have a good product, people will come. I have clients who were coming to my house 3.5 years ago to pick up a charcuterie board
Wow.
who are booking big events
Who
with
are
me now.
still clients now.
Like,
Wow.
and I would say 25% of my clients are my OG clients. They are the people that knocked on my door on Christmas Eve, and that's when I realized I had something. I just decided one year, I think it was for Christmas Eve or Thanksgiving, one of the two, to do charcuterie boxes, and I just put them out on the Eagle page because I live in Eagle. I'm like, anybody want charcuterie boxes? This is this size, and this is this size, and this is what I have. My husband was shocked. I had like 35 orders, and I was like, is between 10 and 12, like 35 people came to my door and ordered board. And then it just kind of grew from there. Like I would just put little snippets out like in Eagle and then like I said, just when you're involved in the community, things will organically come to you, right? I got a feature on Channel 6. Our family got on the cover of Eagle magazine, like, and just even recently, they had it's like being uber aware of opportunities that you may not see as an opportunity, but it could be, right? So my husband was looking through Eagle magazine, for example. We're Eagle residents, and it said, "Send us a picture of your charcuterie." So I sent some pictures of some charcuterie, and I said, "Full disclosure, I do own a catering company. Like, I do this professionally." And she's like, "Oh, would you like to be featured in the magazine? Tell me more about your"
Wow.
it and so a lot of those little things, like, you're never too busy. Just remind yourself as a business owner, you're never too busy to find an inch, right? To find an opportunity. Because even I had no idea that would lead into, like, a feature in the EO magazine. I just figured, "Why not? I'll get my name in there." And then again, it's brand recognition because a lot of my clients are in Eagle because that's where I started. And it's brand recognition, and it's just constantly um, getting brand recognition and like whatever industry you're in, like look for opportunities. Like one of the things we've done is we've contacted venues and said, "Hey, can we be on your preferred vendor list?" Especially once we go into their venue and cater,
Then you can get referrals from there.
we get referrals from there. And organically, I'm the top 3 vendor list for Talea Winery. I always say the name wrong, and I never asked for that. It's just that I kept getting hired from people there. Now people call me and I'll be like, "How'd you get my information?" Talea, Talea.
Amazing.
So, like, things will or if you I always just say, if you do a good job, people will show up.
Yeah, that's incredible. Okay, last question. So, now you're sort of, in the middle perhaps of this journey and this venture. What are some of the things you wish you had known at the very beginning that would have maybe helped you, I don't know, feel a little bit more energy or feel a little bit more confident or,
I
maybe move more
I
quickly?
think I wish I would have let go of some of the reins early on, like,
The delegation
understood,
piece.
like, that delegating will grow your business and to let go of this financial fear, right? People like, "Oh, I can't afford the $300 a month to pay a bookkeeper," but you can't not afford, right? Because if you wanna do well at what you do, you have to delegate what you don't do well. And I wish I had done that sooner. I wish I had understood, like, how much that would have taken off my plate, right? Because my bookkeeper does all the taxes, all like, everything behind the scenes. Because I have to pay sales tax every month. I have to, like, take care of all the behind the scenes stuff. Well, I don't have to do that anymore. I don't have to and then, like, before I would be calling people like, "Didn't I tell you to put on auto pay?" Because I would be too busy and I like, my insurance would lapse, and now I have an admin, and, like, you get that all set up on auto pay, and, like, the bookkeeper takes care of this, she takes care of that, you know what I mean? So when you hire people to do what you are weakest at, your business will grow tenfold because you're not stressing out over the small things that you can't do as well.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. Well, thanks, Robin. Really
Mhm.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
Congratulations
thank you
on the
so much.
great success. And yeah, it seems like you built a
Thank
really special business with real um, kind of like passion and inspiration and
for
connection to what you're doing.
for
Yeah.
sure. Thanks, I appreciate your time.
Incredible. Yeah, likewise. Thanks so much. Good luck. We'll keep in
Thank you.
touch.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Made Locally. If you found this useful, share it with another business owner who's in the trenches like you. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next episode. And if something stood out, I'd love to read your comments. See you in the next episode.